Hi everyone, and welcome to the Hub and Spoken Special, a 6-part series where we have curated some of the awesome discussions we've had over the last 100 episodes. As data and analytics is really in its infancy, and so many people are trying to find their way still, we've always aimed to create a platform for us and our guests to open up and share real-life stories about delivering value from data, have frank and honest discussion about what works and what doesn't, and represent what we at Cynozure and the CDO Hub see as vital topics for organizations to engage in. So this special series celebrates and showcases those discussions, the amazing guests we've had, and the brilliant content we've shared. Each of the 6 episodes in this series focuses on a specific topic: data strategy or data management, business value, data platforms, data leadership, and finally, leading with purpose. It was incredibly hard to decide what to include from previous episodes, as there's been so many amazing things said by so many people. We hope, though, that we've represented this topic well and that it resonates with you all. This is part 1 of the series, using a data strategy as a vital asset in creating a data-guided organization. This episode looks back at the brilliant discussions we've had around the importance of a strong, articulated data strategy, how it's about aligning that strategy very closely to the strategic priorities of your organization. We talk about ensuring the strategy helps you become an adaptable business with an adaptable data strategy, the way you create momentum and buy-in, and at what stage you can say you're done. First up was my conversation with Catherine Bryan at her office in King's Cross, St Pancras, London. Catherine is the Chief Data Officer at Guardian News and Media, and who previously held the data science leadership role at the Co-op, and before that as a partner at Oliver Wyman. This clip encapsulates so well the need to set and deliver a data strategy that respects, focuses on, and is built around the strategic priorities of an organization. Getting intimate with the strategy and what the business is trying to achieve is top priority for getting a data strategy correct. Let's hear what Catherine had to say.
Where are we focusing right now? We've got a big theme which is more strategic and top level, which says, all right, we've got a really clear 3-year strategy of where we're trying to get to. Yeah. Your goal to reach 2 million supporters by 2022. There's then quite a big gap, though, between that and operationally where should we be focusing day to day. So one of our big themes has been trying to really understand, through analytics and research, what is it that drives a reader engagement, and what are the tactics we can use? What can we learn about how we acquire new readers, engage them, build that engagement, how we monetize them, be that through advertising or through converting them to sales, etc. Yeah. And just at a high level, do the strategic analysis to understand the different audience segments, their motivations, what our priorities should be, which audiences should we really be prioritizing, trying to grow engagement and get them to read the next article, versus which audiences should we be trying to convert to support us, versus which are the audiences where actually the best thing for us to do is to continue to engage them but seek to increase our advertising yield, for example. So what's the right goal, and what's the implications of that for the products we've got? So do we have the right product set in order to be attracting the support that we need, for example? So we've got one stream which is sort of very strategic, if you like, create the bridge between strategy and giving direction to the organization. I think the second theme is around have the capability to be able to tailor the experience to the individual reader, sort of call that personalization, what you will. And there's large amounts of our content and site that we would deliberately not personalize because the news should be openly available to everybody. But around the edges, there's actually quite a lot that ideally you should want to personalize. So, for example, big bugbear of mine at the moment, if you've recently contributed to The Guardian, our data setup says I may or may not be able to recognize that. Right. And it might be that next time you come on the site, I may ask you to contribute again. Whereas ideally, that should be personalized so that we don't do that, for example. So there's quite sort of next theme is, right, I really want to be able to make sure that the experience any individual reader's getting is personalized, which means I need to know who they are, which means I need to have the information about their most recent experiences, etc. This industry we're certainly facing a lot of headwinds from a business perspective. The advertising market's extremely tough at the moment. For many different reasons. There's obviously a continual move from print to digital. Print product is extremely profitable. So various headwinds mean this is definitely an industry which is a tough one to operate in. But beyond that, I think from a data perspective, one of our biggest challenges is we don't currently ask readers to register or sign in. So most of our readers are anonymous to us, for example. Right. So from a data perspective, that's a challenge. Probably something we're sort of looking to shift, and we're working out how to do that. I think other challenges which are more generic to our role, I suppose, is data and insight is it can be quite a dry topic. It can be quite complicated. It can be the sort of topic which turns people off and they switch off pretty quickly. So I see this isn't a challenge per se at the moment, but the thing that keeps me awake at night is how do we make sure we don't lose the momentum that we've got and we keep the buy-in of the stakeholders and keep the energy going and we're able to demonstrate the wins as quickly as possible.
I think that's the point, isn't it?
And bring people along.
I think that demonstrating the wins is partly the way you keep that momentum, because that's the sort of success builds success.
Beyond that, my biggest challenge is one of prioritization. The demand is so great.
Well, that's a good place to be.
It's a great place to be. And one of the really nice things is many people, and very often you come into a role like this one and you expect to spend your first 6 months trying to convince people you can be helpful. I haven't had to spend a minute doing that. By contrast, I arrived and within 2 days I'd sort of, you had the deluge of requests and demands that people want, which is fantastic. It's a great problem to have.
It is, and I suppose the danger, downside, whatever you want to call it, of that is that you have to say no to some things. Or more investments needed to make sure you can get the coverage, but prioritization is always necessary. But it's really nice because you talked about having some very clear business sort of strategic aims, which you've aligned yourself really closely to, and it sort of makes it quite easy to prioritise then, because does that then contribute to the strategic aims and that sort of prioritises itself.
And the business runs with are you familiar with the OKR process? We run and prioritise a lot of our activity according to that, which is quite helpful. So that's quite an effective mechanism to sort of drive the activity that we need and bring together the cross-functional teams that are required.
Got it. So those objectives are set and key results are set at a sort of business strategy level, and that filters through to the different teams to drive prioritisation that way?
At a top level, we set broad direction and then invite teams to propose objectives and key results that meet that.
Next up is my discussion with Ed Child, who at the time was the head of enterprise data at Studio Retail, a fast-growing, ex-catalogue but now digital-first retail organisation based in the north of England. Building on the previous concept of aligning with the data strategy, this conversation pulls out the need to engage all parts of the business to identify priorities and where data, insights, and data products can support those priorities. From there, you're able to determine the important use cases that help prove value, build credibility, and importantly, deliver business benefit.
Rather than sending out the kind of monster big books, it's actually going, how can you drop smaller books that are potentially more tailored to the kind of people? So you're giving people more of a kind of nudge, but it's also then going, how we utilize Salesforce and like data for more automated journeys so that actually our marketing's more and more integrated, and you're actually just hitting customers with the right media that they're actually engaging with to actually drive it all. So it's all the traditional stuff, but catalog still has a important part.
It's like another data point in terms of how people shop it and the incremental it drives and the products people buy from that. And it's another engagement point for the people that it resonates with. And I suppose the value of data in that journey or that story is understanding which customers catalog resonates with and which doesn't, which ones will more likely purchase because they've seen the catalogue, and which one's actually, frankly, you're sending it and it's going in the recycling bin. So I think, so just is data playing a part in that more than it used to?
Absolutely. I think this is where it gets really interesting when you're looking at moving on your capabilities, moving away from last click attribution to multi-touch. Then you can see if you've got multi-touch, but when you've hit someone with a offline channel like print, suddenly you can really start understanding the combination of a digital and a offline marketing experience, which is massively valuable. So it's data plays a absolutely fundamental role, and then particularly we can then start being smarter with our media personalization too, so that we're actually talking to you with the right products and offering too. So huge opportunity.
Are there other areas of the business? So you talked a lot about sort of marketing there and customer engagement. There are other, obviously, you're full end-to-end retailer. Are there other parts of the business where there's some interesting use cases for deploying data and insight and models to help?
Absolutely. I think every part of the business is really crying out for it. I think what we're doing is fixing our data foundations and fundamentals. There's huge opportunity with our customer experience and customer services team, how we can feed better data through them so they can actually deliver more timely, relevant information back to customers when they're contacting us. I think there'll be future opportunities in optimizing our supply chain, and we work really, really closely with our financial services business too. So you can make sure that you're really optimizing credit offering, different propositions. So literally every part of the organization wants to be part of this, and ultimately it's for us then going, how can we build the right enterprise capability that helps everybody, rather than building point solutions for individual teams.
The success of a data strategy, getting budget approved and getting an organization excited, motivated and positive about its impact is predicated on building momentum and ensuring you have the right amount of stakeholder buy-in and approval needed at each stage of the journey. In this next clip, I spoke to industry veteran and very good industry friend of mine, Tim Carmichael, back in the very early days of the podcast about just that. Tim has held a number of senior data leadership positions, including the Chief Data and Analytics Officer for the British Army, and at the time of recording is the Chief Data Officer for Chowhu Group, the luxury goods retailer and distributor based in Dubai.
Well, I think the most important thing to realise is if people aren't understanding what it is you're trying to achieve as a Chief Data Officer, that's probably your failing and not necessarily a failing you place in the other party. Are you explaining yourself clearly enough? Have you taken the time to understand what's important to them? If you start understanding what's important to them and their business area, their vertical potentially, their line of business, and how that equates to what's important to the overall business, the overall enterprise, then you can start talking a common language with them of why what you'll do will make a difference for them and why that difference is worth having. It's a positive one. So part of that is being able to speak their language. And clearly part of that is also about infusing your own team about the rationale for doing this. So part of it is being able to speak the language of your data team. And I don't think a Chief Data Officer is just a data person. I think it's a business-focused role, an organizational-focused role. And I think, therefore, the Chief Data Officer, if no one else is doing it, has to be that person who acts as an interpreter. Now, as it happens, in a previous life, I'm an interpreter. I'm an English-French interpreter, so I understand what it's like to have a conversation between two people who would otherwise have a dialogue of the deaf and to help them understand each other. So I take some of those skills about making sure I find a common ground culturally or behaviorally or in terms of understanding what the benefits are, so I can articulate benefits to the business that's being supported in a language they understand. And I can articulate the role and the effort that will be taken by data team people to help satisfy those needs in partnership with that business area in a language they'll understand. And so there's that dual skill, bimodal approach that any chief data officer needs to have. But the aim here is to improve understanding. And part of improving understanding to knock down those challenges is to have a really clear vision. And you can articulate your data strategy as well as you like. It can be written, it can be a slide deck, it can be a series of conversations. But until you've encapsulated that down into the vision, this is what we're going to do with data in this company, and this is why. And the why is because it supports you, the business, us, the business, in delivering the outcomes we want to deliver. Then unless you can articulate that in a clear manner, it's going to land in a more difficult way. As I've already said, part of that is to get senior business leaders to help do that for you, the ones that are already bought in. But those that aren't bought in, it's about constantly going back to that core narrative, that vision of demonstrating benefit. So that's the first way in terms of communication. But frankly, let's be really clear, actions speak louder than words. So part of the challenge here is to make sure that you are actually delivering some benefit that you say that you're going to deliver on. And landing initial projects and initiatives that make a positive change is where you'll start getting buy-in, when people see that you mean what you say and you're walking the walk.
That's great. I think we have similar experience around demonstrating the value, not just talking about the value. I think, it's quite, if you're good at positioning and marketing in a way and influencing, then it's quite easy to sort of convince people that what you're saying is sort of makes sense. But until someone believes it, feels it, trusts it, can see it, can touch it, and has a personal impact on them, it's quite hard to sort of get them over that change curve. A data strategy is a framework that delivers business value through the application of data and analytics at pace and with certainty. To do that, it's important to build adaptability, flexibility, and agility into how you operate. Having a proactive yet responsive operating model, culture, and attitude builds a data organization that can truly embed itself into the heart of the business. In this next clip, I spoke to the brilliant Nirali Patel, who is the Director of Data Analytics at OpenReach, but at the time was the Chief Data and Analytics Officer at AXA Health, about how she was approaching the concept of agility and adaptability. I always love talking and hanging out with Nirali, so it was a pleasure to have her on the show.
Yeah, it's interesting you go to there, because I think you mentioned the operating model. You also mentioned enabling your customer, if you like, of the data function to be able to self-serve a little bit. The thing that we see as can be a challenge is how you create, like, it's okay for a data team to sort of set themselves up in an agile way, but actually being agile, it requires a almost whole company, or certainly end-to-end stakeholder focus on that how that operating model works. So how do you go about creating an operating model that is responsive, that people can accept that speed and that pace of change?
The company that can do that is the winning company in this situation. From my experience and what we're doing within our business, I think we have like 5 areas that we look at. So one is about having that right focus, and that comes down to prioritizing, understanding what is your business strategy. Yes, okay, you want to be a health partner, but what does that mean? Does that mean you want to give everything to everybody, or you want to be a niche market and, give X, Y, and Z, and that's it, to a smaller group of people? It's about having the right capabilities within the organization as well. So, and whether that's, people being data literate, people understanding your products and services, people having the agile mindset. If you think about, slight diversion here, but if you think about the type of interviews that most organizations do nowadays, it's less about technical experience, and it's probably more about their personalities, their cultures, and their attitude, behaviors. Yeah. And then the other 3 areas I'd look at is, because I'm in data, so I'm going to have to say data privacy, and because I'm in healthcare, that's a definite, operating model area. Again, I mentioned about the right culture, and then just this whole thing about a willingness about embracing, technology. So having that rarely invented here kind of attitude. So working with partners, because I think some organizations still have build it your own kind of mindset, whether it be tech or models, but actually the partnering mindset is what you need to do. So, and I can talk about those in great detail, but I won't do that right now. But if once you've got those kind of 5 kind of principles, or they're not well worded principles here today, then you can start delivering an agile, flexible, a responsive operating model. But just to go back to the situation that we're in today, it's that fight and flight situation, isn't it? So you tend to revert back to your core, your original condition and values. And what we have to do as organisations and data teams, and I've had to do it with my guys, is say the instant reaction to this is do it the way we always ever used to do it. Have multiple teams and, very scattergun approach. But what we've done, I said, no, we're not going to be doing that, guys. We can't, respond to this pandemic this way. What we need to do is take in the values that we've been learning over the last couple of years, our new mindset, our new culture, our new strategy, and put it through a funnel approach and use these things that, what is the most important response that we need to get back out? What is the impact of COVID, for example, on our business? Right, that's the first priority piece of work to get done. What can we do in terms of setting up in response to COVID? Because the private hospitals have been taken up by the NHS, so what else can a health insurance company do? Right, now let's look at that piece of work and let's work through that bit of work as well. So, it's about staying strong as leaders to really embrace your culture and really drive it through your teams.
And you mentioned earlier actually about proof of concepts, talking of solutions and minimum viable products, MVPs. Is that a concept that's known and understood, and do you use it? Or do you tend to jump into more sort of build out in a project in a more traditional sense?
I think it's dependent on what the business problem that you're trying to solve at that point in time is. So, preference is to create an MVP, but know the scope and the content of that MVP. So, a simple example, again, going to COVID, we wanted to create a COVID dashboard, which looks at call numbers and sales and everything, and etc. So the guys created an MVP version and it caveated it to the consumers to say, right, this is great. We've built it up. We've created it within the space of 24, 48 hours, but the data may be inconsistent. So when you see it tomorrow, it might look a bit different, because each time when we recreate this thing, we're going to iteratively improve the sausage machine activity, so to speak, to make it a bit more robust, because it's not readily available. So MVPs are great, but as long as you've got a plan to scale it up or industrialize it, and that's where I think we've fallen down, and you do tend to buy down, because you get a great idea. It might be a nice text mining model or a next best action model, and that works brilliantly in your sandbox environment. But the minute you try and take that and integrate that with your, CRM solution, it kind of starts falling apart a little bit, and that bit takes longer. So it's about educating again the business that yes, we can get an MVP up in the space of a very short time, but we have to look at the industrialization process does take a bit longer and involves, changes in tech or business processes.
Yeah. I think that's an important, that sort of sometimes called lab to live, isn't it? Or innovation to production. But I think that's something that a lot of organizations do struggle with, and can have lots and lots of sort of trials and MVPs and project and small sort of prototypes all over the place, when they're able to make them sort of put them into real life, if you like. It sounds like that's been a bit of a challenge. What other blockers have you experienced, or what are the key blockers you've experienced on trying to be more agile or have this level of agility in the business?
It's the reverse of the conversation that we had around what do you need for an operating model to be this way, and so it's about, is the culture the right culture? Do they understand, again, do they understand what do people understand what agile means in terms of what you're trying to do as an organization or as a data function? Just because you do something in an agile way doesn't always mean that it's potentially the right way. And if you're building foundations, a great example is when we were building our data foundations, everyone's like, we're not bringing out any value, where's your MVP? And I go, well, when you're building, a whole new data lake and stuff, you don't get your MVP straight away. You need to bring your pipelines in and stuff. But so things like, it's about context and understanding from your stakeholders, so to speak. The willingness around embracing technology and digital partners, etc., to help you be more agile, and changing long business processes, I think, is the other bit as well, because obviously we've set business processes up that meet our business needs today, and we want to make them more efficient and more lean, so to speak. But that means you're going to have to be willing for them to fail occasionally, And I hate the mantra, but it is true. Fail fast, you learn more, and but it's adopting that and actually just accepting the 80-20 rule around that as well, that yes, we're going to fail, but we'll learn and we'll move on quicker and we'll get some new stuff coming out, or some iterative stuff, but it's not going to be perfect every time. The amount of times I get asked, have the perfect dashboard, I'm like, you're not going to get that, not from day one at least.
Yeah, certainly, because the need and the requirement and the context and the world and the environment changes.
Yeah.
In the final part, I turn to another great industry friend of mine who is also a veteran of the data leadership space, having held senior and chief data officer positions at the AA, Addison Lee, and now insurance company Tempcover. Graham McDermott coined the phrase, "Data is a journey, not a destination," off the back of his experience that really data strategy is about continually iterating, improving, developing, and shaping what you do with data to deliver business benefits. As organizations and the world around them changes, your data strategy and the work you do also needs to change.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely always thought that there was a destination that I was going to get to, and then when I get there, I can put my feet up and don't need to do any more with data. It'll be fine. It will take care of itself after that. And I think when you start out life in some big corporates, everything's based around, back then, 3-year strategies, 5-year strategies. You set this vision. It was reasonably achievable, and that's what companies set themselves. And so, but it was quite far off. And so actually, particularly in the data function, it might not really mean anything, and there was nothing specific to data per se. So you would set your own sort of, I suppose, goal in mind, and you have this destination. And I used to say to my team that this is what we're trying to head for, and they'd say to me, "You're asking for perfection, Graham. This thing doesn't exist." And I said, carry on, probably to some extent whipping myself and whipping the team into, no, we can make it. And I think actually, in my time at the AA, and because we changed hands a few times and had different owners, and in particular, the period under private equity ownership, where they tend to be very, they don't make any bones about the fact they're quite short-term planning. Yeah. So it can be they'll talk about it's a 3 to 5 year strategy and out. In reality, they set a 12-month strategy. They're looking at all sorts of other strategies. So it makes you a bit more short-termist, but actually from a data point of view, it says, well, in 12 months' time, we want to have improved this, and this. So, yes, I coined this phrase.
In some respects, that gives you a destination, or certainly a point to sort of focus on.
Yeah.
But is it not really worked out like that, though?
I suppose I got worried that, that there was this final destination was like a nirvana and, of perfection. And actually, you just have to accept that you're on a journey. You should keep setting yourself these goals and these destinations that are, a stretch for you and the team, but explain to the team that, next year we're going to set a new set of destinations. It's not done. We're not putting our feet up in there'll always be work to do, but it's not actually work to do. It's actually improving what we do. So I look at our current team, and we introduced, visualization tool set last year. And in a year, we've made massive strides in our adoption, the company's adoption. It's saved us resource, time, money. It's helped people come into the business and understand, the metrics, the dynamics. And as happened recently, with just a change of ownership, only 4 or 5 weeks ago now, we introduced a new management team to the sort of self-serve and the dashboards and explained them to them. And they found it really easy to understand and get their head round how the business was operating, particularly as the day after they arrived, we suddenly headed into the Boris lockdown and everything that used to happen doesn't happen any longer. And so you need those availability of metrics and stuff. That was one of our destinations for this year, or last year rather, was to get to that point. And this year I set a new destination for that, which was a big step forward.
Just sort of picking up on the language, because I think, there's this idea that actually there's a journey you go on. There's no sort of nirvana or end point, but there are multiple destinations, milestones, objectives that you're trying to achieve along the way. Is that sort of more accurate way?
Yeah. I think I probably secretly have this nirvana in mind. I just I don't play it out that way. I sort of play it out as a set of destinations, to get there.
Yeah, sort of waypoints.
Yeah, I think otherwise you will scare some of the team if you pitch something that says, our destination in 3 years' time is this. And they'll go, oh, that's too long off. Lots of things could change. And actually you sort of think, well, that's my responsibility as the sort of data leader to mind how we're progressing. Should we change that ultimate destination along the way? And for them not to worry too much about, whether it's that final destination, as it were, is achievable, but just the stepping stones on the.
Having a data strategy is no longer a nice to have. It's a vital asset in creating a data-guided organization. Crafted, positioned, and well-funded, it can be a game changer to organizations in all sectors. And I love that I get to spend so much time helping organizations to do that, and that I get to speak to so many about how they are approaching this great opportunity. I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Hub and Spoken special series. I want to thank all our guests in the episodes curated on this edition and all other editions for their contribution to making this podcast so valuable and sharing their stories. I also want to thank our wonderful listeners across 126 countries and counting for listening, feeding back and sharing these episodes with other people to enjoy. We hope you find this series interesting, inspiring and informative, so please do check out the rest of the series.